everyone. My name is Avi Barr. I'm the National Sales Manager for a company called ASI, also known as American Specialties. Just before we start, any manufacturers or customers in the room or integrators? We have a customer and a manufacturer? Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about us as a manufacturer and our use case, which I think is a little bit unique and interesting in that we predominantly sell in the US through independent sales reps. And independent sales reps are an interesting group of people because we want them to use our CRM as our frontline people. However, they don't necessarily work for us. So getting them on board and getting to use the CRM and building a CRM platform that actually works for them and encourage them to work is the challenge that we had. So a little bit more about us as a company. So we're a manufacturer. We manufacture commercial bathroom accessories, partitions, lockers. We do what is traditionally known in the building world as Division 10. So we also now just made an acquisition and do manufacture marker boards and tack boards and the things you traditionally find in schools and universities and office buildings. So we're an interesting company. When I got hired at the ASI Group 3 years ago, in my final interview, our CEO said something interesting to me. He says, "We're the smallest big company you'll ever work for and the biggest small company you'll ever work for." So we're a privately held company with roughly 1,000 employees owned by 2 people. And as you can see, we have a lot of divisions, right? So on the left is actually the divisions that I'm responsible for, which is American Specialties, our accessories. Our 2 partition companies, we're even more complex because we own 2 competitors and they compete with each other. And then we have our storage solution business. And then we have all our supporting divisions. And then we have our international brands, our operations in Belgium, Canada, a visual display products that comes out of Canada, and then our China group and our Australia group. So we have a lot of different constituents with a lot of different use cases. And designing a CRM, one single platform that meets everybody's needs, was an interesting challenge. When I joined the company 3 years ago, we did not have a CRM. So actually, it was one of my first questions in the interview was, what CRM platform are we working on as a national sales manager? It's really important to know how you're going to manage and lead your team and how you're going to sell. And the look that I got was, we don't have a CRM. Now, we had quasi-CRMs. We had the Canadian division that was using ACT as their CRM, quasi-CRM database. The guys in Australia had some legacy CRM that they had used, but it was no longer active, so they were sort of using something that wasn't supported. And then the rest of the operations were just sort of going their merry way, throwing darts in the dark, trying to figure out if sales was actually growing or working. And what we discovered is we had no consistency in our methodology of selling. We had no visibility other than actual sales numbers on what our sales teams were doing, how effective they were, what was working, what wasn't working. So we had a real challenge, and we had a big group of people who operate very, very differently. The guys in Europe operate very differently to the guys in Australia, and so forth. My purview of responsibility was the US, but it was taken upon myself and a team to really take the CRM and deploy it not only in the US, but worldwide. In the US, we had a specific challenge in that we have 30 territories, and out of the 30 territories, 90% of them were independent sales reps. So these are independent sales reps who also represent other manufacturers. To some sales reps, we're the only manufacturer they represent. And to some sales reps, they have up to 10 manufacturers. So part of our challenge is not only getting them to sell and work, but actually getting their mind share. When they go make a sales call, who are they representing today? Are they representing us, or are they representing the 3 other companies? Now, none of the other companies are competitors, but that doesn't mean we get their full attention all the time. And 10% of our sales force were inside sales teams. So in New York and Chicago, we have direct sales teams that operate in the more traditional fashion that you would traditionally see. So roughly 100-ish people out on the street every day pushing in the US. Canada was the reverse. Canada has 10% roughly independent sales reps and 90% inside sales team. And they already had a culture that adopted a CRM. And the rest of the world, Europe, Middle East, Australia, they have direct sales teams. And Australia already had some level of cultural adoption of a CRM. So again, the challenge for us was not only in understanding how we should build and develop a CRM that will make it useful for an independent sales force, but how do we do it for a company that has multiple companies, some of which are competing, and different territories that function and go to market differently as well. To add to our challenge, I frequently say this at cocktail parties because it's more fun, the people we sell to frequently don't buy our product. People sort of look at me, well, that doesn't make any sense. Well, we sell through distribution. So our independent sales reps develop relationships with distribution, most of which are already a captured audience, and it's really about getting more market share with our existing customers. But our non-buying customers are architects, building owners, facility managers. These are influencers. But without those influencers, the downstream sale doesn't happen. A distributor in our world doesn't necessarily buy a product if it's not specified on the architectural plans. Now, what's interesting about this is what would motivate an independent sales rep who operates on 100% commission to go and talk to an architect? Well, that maybe 3 years down the line when the specification and the drawings are made, 3 years later the building is built. So he's banking on making a future sale on an activity today that might be 3 years later. So it's a really long sales cycle. So what naturally happens is that our representatives would go and spend all their time, or a majority of their time, with distribution. It's a big investment to spend your time at the front end versus the back end. And so their natural inclination, whether they consciously or subconsciously do it, is to go and chase the carrot, which is the dollar signs at the end of the day. How much can I convince this customer to buy today because I can tangibly feel it, see it, touch it, I can make a sale. I can feel good about it as a salesperson. So we had two challenges. One is having a sales team that is not employed by us to operate in a consistent, systematic format that would adopt our system, and two, get them to actually change their behavior on what they're doing, not just in terms of using a system, but actually having the system help them change their behavior and overall their selling strategies. So first of all, we didn't have a strong or good contact management system that could handle any load. I mean, mixes of Excel spreadsheets and ACT databases and then notebooks. Most of our reps would operate with something like this. This is how they go to meetings. They don't carry laptops. They might have their cell phone. They maybe don't carry a tablet. They're operating with paper and pen and memorizing and keeping mental notes of all their activities and their contacts. We needed to drive a consistent message and a consistent methodology through our independent reps. Because they were independent, they all have their own different cultures and their own different methodologies and their own management who have their own priorities. So what we found is, if we're not consistent in the way we go to market, we're not going to find that we're going to get consistent results, and we're not going to have a consistent story and message. So we needed something that's going to help us get consistency and a discipline. We wanted a single system for inside and outside reps. Again, we have our inside people who predominantly use our ERP, then our outside sales team that had whatever they were using. And then we needed a single view of our sales activity. As a sales manager, it was very difficult for me to sit with the rest of my management team and communicate what it is our sales team is doing and why we're effective and where we're succeeding and where we're failing. So how did we do that in the past? Well, we would travel a lot, which we still do. But we would travel with our reps and we'd make notes on how they were performing and what they were doing, and we'd come back and we'd write reports and share that with the management team, and it was extremely anecdotal. So we needed a methodology to collect data that wasn't anecdotal and that was factual. And we needed to have key performance indicators to start driving different behaviors and getting a sense of what we should be doing at the front end of the pipeline as opposed to just the back end of the pipeline. So we started to look around for CRMs. And we looked at a whole host of CRMs. We looked at Microsoft Dynamics, we looked at Oracle, we looked at Salesforce, and we looked at Sugar. We looked at a few others like Zoho and a couple of other niche CRMs, as well as a CRM that was baked into our ERP. And what we realized, first of all, is ERP companies are in the business of building ERP systems, not CRMs, and that's not their focus, nor do they have the vision like someone like Sugar CRM or Salesforce or somebody else whose business it is a CRM. And then as we went through the process, we realized that Sugar had a number of advantages. Number one, we genuinely felt this is a system we can get adoption with. It was easy to customize and deploy. The results today is we have 100% adoption by our users, and we track our users' usage of the CRM, and we communicate back to them. Not to say that it's 100% perfect adoption, but everybody's using it to some extent. We now have data-driven insights. When we launched this, we asked questions like, what is our market share in this territory? And we'd get answers, 15, 25, 30%, and then we'd ask them how they got to those numbers, and then you sort of got the, well, very little of it was data-driven. And we needed to have some level of forecasting. Without good analytical, hardcore data, you can't really make good, meaningful forecasts. So we used to ask people to fill out forms on what they think the next year would be like. And again, it was one of these. Yeah, I think next year we're going to have a 5% growth. What did you base it on? Not much. So in deploying Sugar, we did a couple of things that was really important for us. First of all, we wanted to stay within the Sugar platform of on-demand. We have enterprise. We're on 7.9.2, I believe, or 7.8.2, sorry. And so we wanted to have as few on-premise customizations because we knew that we wanted it to be upgrade safe. So first and foremost, we try to do as much as we can out of the box. So one of the challenges was the permissions of teams and roles. So when you have independent reps and you're now giving them access to your CRM, how do you sort of put them in that box of only seeing the data they're supposed to see and nothing else? Well, we use teams and roles here. So our teams, and for those who are administrators knows, teams controls what records you see, and roles defines what you can see within the records. So even though we had one customer, as you saw early on, we have two competing partition companies. Our reps only rep one of those two partition companies. So they could see that customer, but they could only see what they were buying from that one partition company and not the other. Also in our management team, we have managers of both companies, and they don't need to see what the other one's selling either. So we had some complex team and role customizations that we had to do. Not customizations, but configurations. It turns out that we were hitting the upper limits of what Sugar was used to. I think we have upwards of 100 teams right now. So even though we only have 30 US territories, we had to double that to 60 territories because we have the two partition companies. And then we have all the other European and so forth. So we started to push the limits because that starts to hamper performance. And Sugar worked with us to make that work really well. We use Process Author to automate a lot of our processes to get that level of consistency and performance. And we really use knowledge base for the training, and I'll talk a little bit about our training later, but we try to use as much of the in-house functionality of Sugar to actually make Sugar a central repository where the reps get everything they need, including training. So we wanted to make this the platform that they live in. But we had to do some customizations because our business is complex and it's unique and it's different and it's not the sort of thing that you have out of the box. So we did a lot of things. Some things were small. Reps didn't understand what the word opportunity meant. But if we could stick the word project in front of it, they get, oh, that's a building. I get it. But if you said opportunity, they don't, what do you mean by an opportunity? That's not the language that they were used to. So simple customizations or just like renaming modules went a long way. And then we created modules for the things that they were used to doing. So our reps report to us on a monthly basis, and they have to write a report. And every rep wrote a very different report. We standardized by creating a module for their report writing so they can report to us every month. And it makes their life easier because now they know what we expect of them in what format. And we get a document that actually makes sense to us as opposed to getting really bizarre stories. And then we did some really heavy lifting for the reps. And that's in our integration. So we integrated with our ERP. That was our first priority. Our ERP has all 2,500 customers and hundreds of thousands of transactions every year. So the data that comes in from our ERP, it's a one-way integration from our ERP to our CRM. There are thousands of transactions every day. A lot of our business is transactional, some of it is not transactional. But there are, tens of thousands of quotes, tens of thousands of orders, tens of thousands of products being shipped every single day, and customer changes. So we worked with our integrators who's W Systems to write an integration from our ERP to our CRM. We then also wrote an integration, or in the process of finalizing an integration, from our core construction data source, which is Dodge Construction. For those of you in this realm would know Dodge, they're sort of the big name around. But they basically carry data on virtually every single project that gets built in the US. Every single architect, every single developer, every single general contractor is in that database. And so rather than telling our reps to go here to get this data and go here to get the ERP data and go here to write a report, everything comes into a centralized system, and that was one of the big things that drove adoption. And then the other thing was, how do we make it easy? We do server-side integration with things like Exchange for emails. And so we used outside services for that, like Riva Sync. So 3 big integrations. There's more coming down, and we'll talk a little bit about our roadmap in the middle, a little later on. So adoption was not easy. If anybody's going to tell you that this is a great platform, it is a great platform. Doesn't necessarily mean people are going to use it. And the lack of usage, as everybody knows, I don't care what CRM you have 2 fundamental problems. How are you going to implement it? And the second is how you're going to drive adoption. If you don't get adoption, you just threw a whole bunch of money away. We landed up really thinking about this and spending around 6 to 8 months just talking to our reps about the potential of a CRM. When we would go on the road and have them as a captive audience for 2 hours when we were making sales calls in the car where they couldn't run away from me, we would have those really difficult conversations about what a CRM is. Some of them never heard of CRMs. A couple of them even developed their own CRMs. So, and then what it could mean for them. We had phone calls, we had manager trips, we had meetings. And so we collected all this information and really listened to them. And we started to use that as the basis for developing the platform. So before us even thinking about what we wanted to do, we listened to what it is they could get out of it. Hypothetically, what would they use it for? Would they use it at all? What were their concerns? So we really wanted to understand their needs. And then we discussed it internally. We started to develop a plan. And then we sold it. We sold it at our national sales team. But here's what we learned from our independent reps. Are they giving up their edge? They thought, I'm going to hold my cards really close to my chest because if you know everything I know about the customer, do you really need me? Maybe you'll replace me with a direct sales team once you have all that data. How is my livelihood here at stake? And the reason they had these concerns is not just made-up concerns. A lot of manufacturers have gone direct. Many of them for this exact reason, because they really struggle to get their independent sales team on board. Are we just going to create a bunch of extra busy work? Are they going to become data entry people? These are people who run their own companies, are independent. And now I have to fill out a bunch of forms in a CRM. What's this going to look like and feel like? Are you going to be watching over me? I'm independent. I don't work for you. I mean, I work for you, but I don't work for you. But, the big brother concern was really big on the list of, when we sort of did our tallies and sort of did our research with our reps. One of the biggest things that we're concerned about is, are you going to be standing over my shoulder and watching me every day, and now you're going to know every little minutia of what I'm doing and not doing? And some of them have concern for fear, and many of them don't, but nevertheless fear it as well. There was the immediate resistance to change. Just because change is change and they don't like change, and they've been doing what they've been doing for 30 years, surely they know what they've been doing. We've been having good growth every year. Why the hell are we changing something that ain't broke? And being exposed and held accountable which sort of goes with the big brother thing. But all of a sudden, we're asking them to really become a lot closer to us and open and show us their cards. And we had to do that first. What we had to do is show our cards first in order for them. So immediately you can sense there was a sense of hostility to the whole concept and the whole idea. This was not easy. We knew we had a serious battle ahead of us. And then the last one was, how much will it cost? Do we have to pay for this? Because other manufacturers have made us pay. Why should I pay for something that you're going to get the data? This is for you, Mr. Manufacturer. This isn't for me. Do I have to pay for this? So these were the concerns. So at our national sales meeting, we made the big announcement. By this point, everybody knew it was coming. And I guarantee you they were calling each other well ahead of the sales meeting. And there were the Chinese whispers and what they thought they heard, what they think they're going to see. Everybody talks. Even amongst 30 rep territories, they talk amongst themselves. And we realized this is not something we have to shove down their throat. We have to sell them on this. We have to get complete buy-in. And so the way that we did it is we said, you will make more money by using this. Okay, how will I make more money? Okay, so we first of all we had to put them in a difficult spot by exposing some of the things they didn't know. Asking publicly the question of, what is your market share in your territory? And if you can't answer it with analytics, it's not a meaningful answer. Well, how much money are we losing to this competitor? And not just why are we losing to this competitor, why? Is it because of lead time? Is it because of loyalty? I want specifics. And if you can't answer that, how are you going to build a strategy to succeed next year? If we don't have good information, you can't grow your business. Then we said, no, you don't have to pay for this. And that was a big sigh of relief in the room. When we said, you don't have to pay, everybody went, whew. And then they went, okay, we're starting to like this. And then we started to show them all the things that the system will do for them. Things that would ordinarily take them an hour or 2 hours to prepare sales numbers before a meeting, or to try to get all their customer data, or to plan their trip. We showed them how they could do that in 1 or 2 clicks. How they could make notes on their mobile phone just by talking to it right out of a meeting. We started to show them how it's easier to do business using this platform versus this is something you have to do for us. And we started with very, very modest goals. We didn't say, okay, we want you to log every call, every meeting. We want you to update every opportunity every time there's a small change. We want you to follow up on every quote. We gave them 3 objectives. We said, you can use all this feature-rich system, but you have to do 3 things. If you don't comply, we're going to have a problem. So there had to be some stick. But ultimately, we kept the bar really low just to get them going, just to get them comfortable. And then we gave them a training plan, and a very extensive training plan. So here's what we did. First and foremost, we made it useful to them. We knew this would not do anything for us if we didn't make it useful for them. And we continue to try to find ways to make it easier, faster, fewer clicks, less to absorb, less things for them to do. We had a very detailed training program. So for our training program, we had well in excess of 15 hours of training spread over 15 weeks, and not consecutive weeks. But every week they had to take an hour training. And we recorded the webinars, then we created a 10-minute video clip of the training. So we created a shortened version, a 1-hour detailed version, and then we gave them the documentation to go with it, and we hosted it all on Knowledge Base. So we basically created a YouTube channel for them that was also hosted, and they could find, so if they didn't remember how to do a quote follow-up, they could go to our Knowledge Base system, and they could either watch a quick 10-minute video, which anybody could absorb a 10-minute video. They certainly don't want to listen to me for 1 hour again, but they heard me for an hour, and it was recorded if there was something they wanted. And we gave them a written document that they could download off the Knowledge Base. That wasn't enough, by the way. So then we created a help desk every Friday between 1 and 4 p.m. that they could call in, and there's a person that they could pre-schedule time with that could help them on anything that they were struggling with. And then the management team, when they traveled with the reps, we modeled behavior. So when we walked out of a sales meeting, I would literally get on my phone and say, okay, let's go make our notes now. Because if you make it at the end of the day, you've forgotten all the pertinent things. During the meeting, I still did what they were familiar with. We made our notes together on here. And before we left that parking lot, our notes were in the CRM. We did a couple of other interesting things if anybody wants to discuss it offline, but we kept it simple. Expectations were low, and then we gave them dashboards, and this was really a critical part. We gave them 2 dashboards that we basically told them they have to look at on a regular basis. One told them how well their sales are doing. I promise you they look at that every day. And it was easy. Before, they used to go into an ERP analytics tool and try to run reports, and it would take an hour, and then they'd have to run 4 reports to find out what their quotes. Here they had one dashboard where they could visually see, are they up, are they down? And if they're down, they're panicking because it's their revenue. So first of all, we made it very easy for them to identify where they are successful or not on what they think is most important. Then on the same dashboard, we told them, we expect you to do quote follow-up. So here's how many quotes you still have to follow up on, and here's the results when you did follow up on them. So we connected the activity we wanted them to do with the net result. And so when we're there, we talk about these dashboards, and we look at the dashboards together. So they know we're looking at the dashboards, and so they're looking at the dashboards, and then we can have a constructive conversation about the data and the dashboards. But we also added one more dashboard, which is the KPI, the Working with Architects dashboard. And this was important because there's no direct revenue connected to it, but it was an important activity that we wanted to drive their behavior. And by the fact that they know there's a dashboard, they can see the needle, and they can see that needle move, that needle represents success or failure. And as a salesperson, what we realized is money is a great motivator, but just being successful is even a bigger motivator. And if they had a needle they could push, they kept being motivated to push that needle. So now we're really interested in gamification on sales and how we can take that to the next step. And we minimize data entry. So we really kept the amount of stuff they actually have to put in very, very, very little. You know, one of the things that I always took away from the Steve Jobs presentation when he introduced the iPhone was he says, this, where's my iPhone? It's in my pocket. It's a phone, it's a music player, and it's the internet. It's all in one. And so that's very much the principle that we went and took it to our reps. It says, this is the one thing that will do everything for you. And it may not do everything today, but we're getting there. And whatever you want it to do, tell us, we'll work on it. So we're sort of, in many ways, look at our sales rep as our customers, even though they're not. They sell to our customers, and we're their customer. But we really try to serve them. And that mentality and that relationship and that partnership, I think, is what fosters a lot of adoption. So we talked at length about our training program. That 10 session has already grown to 15 sessions. And so yeah, we talked about it. Our 10-minute abridged videos, our hosted notes and instructions, our one-on-one sessions, and our walkthrough with our managers. Our quote follow-ups. We set small set of customers. This is one of the other things. What we realized with our reps is too much data on the CRM sometimes overwhelmed them. So in New York City, there's 800 architectural firms. So we get all this data from Dodge, right, on every architectural firm and every single project. And they look at this data and they go, where do I start? You want me to perform this? And now we expect, but remember, if we just wanted to leave them to their own devices and expect that our reps would have their own self-management systems, which is partly why we hire them, what we don't get is consistency, right? We'd have one territory that maybe does it really, really well and another territory that maybe doesn't do it so well. So one of the things that we did is limit small sets of data. How do you get to small sets of data so it's manageable and it's not overwhelming? We did a lot of scoring and a lot of analytics on the back end. And we made it easy. We said to them, hey, don't chase 800 customers. Here's the 10 that you have to chase this week. These are the most important guys this week, or this month, or this year. And by the way, push this needle on these 10, and you've done well. And guess what? It's a manageable task. it's palatable. And so we can drive a consistent performance and behavior. And we made things like the monthly reports much, much easier. This is what our dashboards look like. The one on the left, you can see each one of those bars is a year, and each one of those different colors is a month. So they can very quickly see, how's each year looking like? And am I ahead or behind so far this month? And on the right, it's just the same thing, just on a month by month. On the right over here, you see the three. This is our quote follow-up. Each one of those bars is a customer, so they can very quickly see which customer has the most quotes that need to be followed up on. And we said, hey, only quotes over a certain amount from last quarter. So it's not every single quote, because we do thousands. And then they can see on a pie chart how many have they followed up on, how much are won and lost, and how many are still pending. And on the right is the results. And they get those results live. This makes salespeople feel good. When they can go from one thing, if they touch that, and that moves that bar, and that moves that, they feel good. They'll see they believe at this point that revenue will come because they're doing the right thing. Without visualizing it, it's abstract. You can talk to them, they can understand it in a session, but it's abstract. How did we minimize data entry? This was really important. How do we do this effectively? One, we bring data to them. We bring the sales number from the ERP straight into here. I can pull up any customer at any point in time, and I can tell you exactly how much they bought, how much this year versus last year on my mobile phone. Where the sales have grown, quotes have grown, has the quote to sales ratios changed? Every detail about that customer is live from the ERP to here. And again, we're not a small company. There is thousands of data points, and it just works flawlessly, and they like it. Historically, they'd have to pull this data up before their meetings, and they'd have to do a lot of prep work. Simple screen layouts. We took a lot of things out of the fields. We kept it to the bare minimum. If we overload too much data that they have to see, they won't look at anything. We kept it really, really simple, and we automated it. And then the data entry was simple. How do we make data entry simple? These guys, some of them are 20, and some of them are pushing 65 and 75. Typing in notes on a mobile phone at the end of a meeting is not what they want to do. But if I just show them that I can use Siri to dictate my notes in, even if the note's not perfect, it gets done. If they can just dictate their notes in, which is what they do now, they make their notes. And then we did a whole bunch of integrations. So we use W Systems, which is our integrator, and we have some great systems with them. W Maps was one of my favorite things. It allowed the rep to see, if I have a meeting in New York City, or let's say in Westchester, what other customers are within a 10-mile radius so that I don't play chicken scratch around the state? I can go and have 5 meetings today instead of 2 meetings because I can be really efficient. They love that. Their ability to quickly map where customers are and then book and schedule their meetings so that they're all around the same place was really, really important. W Docs, that meant they could actually print out reports that they could hand to customers, data that would come from the ERP. So when they go visit with a customer, they could print out reports and documents that would be conversation pieces. And W Docs allowed us to grab data from a lot of different sources, collate them into one coherent document that they could then share with customers and present for themselves. And we use the same thing for other reasons, like our internal monthly reports and so forth. We use Riva Sync to synchronize Exchange, so emails are automatically synced back and forth, calendars automatically synced back and forth, and so forth. These are things that really made our life easier, and that was the key to adoption. So there's one inherent challenge with all of this, and this is where I think I'm somewhat stumped. And here's the challenge. How does it look like from an independent rep's perspective when he has 10 manufacturers with 10 different CRMs? Now we hit the real challenge. What we discovered is we, amongst our peers in manufacturing, we were actually early adopters. We didn't think we were. I thought we were way behind the curve. What I discovered is very few of our competitors or other people in our industry actually use CRMs. So it was lucky for us, and it was important for us to get our reps to use our CRM, because when somebody else comes with Salesforce and Dynamics, they'll go, I'm so used to Sugar. This is so different. I'm going to use Sugar because I know Sugar. But the bigger problem is what happens when you have 10 manufacturers telling you to use their CRM? What are you as a representative going to do? I don't think there's an easy answer to this. And because here's my way of thinking about this. If I was a rep, I would have my own CRM that would have bridges and connections to all the other CRMs. That works, except these guys don't have the budget to do it. We're building our CRM, we're building all this customizations and custom fields and this and that. Can they do this? And can they do this 10 times? This is a challenge. So I put the question out to our sales reps, what are you going to do? And they put it out to me. Well, what am I going to do with this manufacturer and that manufacturer? And so doesn't have a CRM. Can I use your CRM to capture their data? The answer to that was interesting. We decided to use tags as a means of letting them manage other manufacturing data without having to do any customization, just by doing tags. So if you went to have a call and he talked about 3 different products from 3 different manufacturers, he would tag it with 3 different manufacturers. That way you could search and report on it. And it didn't require any customization on our part. I felt somewhat uneasy about this because I don't want data related to other manufacturers in my CRM. It's not so much that I didn't want it. I didn't mind it as much as I think like it's a breach of their data. But it's a challenge, and this is a challenge that I don't think we have easy answers for. And I think this is going to make the concept of what the age-old industry of independent reps more and more and more challenging. If you have independent reps that rep multiple manufacturers or multiple different companies, how they do this, I think, will be very, very challenging. So what's next on the horizon for us? We have a fairly long roadmap. This is just some of the simple stuff. Digital marketing integration is really our immediate next step. More detailed analytics and dashboards. We want to deliver more useful data faster so that they can be more effective in the field in an easier way. And we want to get broader company integration. Right now, it's just our outside sales team. We want to bring in our customer service teams and our support teams and all the broader sense of the company into the CRM. We really had to prove the use case. One of my I have a very simple measurement of whether the CRM adoption, or whether the CRM platform is somewhat effective or not from an adoption standpoint. And one of the metrics you could look at is how many people are using it, how frequently they're using it, what modules are they using, and you can get all sorts of metrics like that. But here's my favorite. If you turn around the next national sales meeting and say, bad news, guys, we don't have the budget for the CRM, we're going to axe this project. And everybody's up in arms, you had a good, successful deployment. If everybody is jumping up for joy, you failed. I mean, there's no better measurement in terms of deployment is whether your sales team says, this is fundamentally what I need to do my job, then you've changed the culture. If they're breathing a sigh of relief, you've got to go back to the drawing board. I have a partial data point for that. I got an email today from one of my reps saying, hey, I got this new person on board. They've been on board for a week. Why don't they have a Sugar login yet? We really desperately need this. And that was like my big aha moment today, that we're on the right path. We still got a long way to go, but that's it. We're on our way. So, any questions? And thank you very much.
I do have a question in regards to, I'm guessing that a lot of your business is bid business. I'm guessing that a lot of your business is bid business and that you're tracking a win-loss in your system in some way, shape, or form. But yes. I'm wondering if you add additional details of who you lost to, margin of error, so on and so forth, and how you've managed that. We're in a similar...
So the short answer is it's somewhat complicated for us. It's complicated for us on 2 levels. One, a lot of our business is transactional, and a lot of our business is bid business, and it's hard to compare the two. We originally wanted to track the bid business in the opportunity module. What we realized is, how do you create those opportunities? If the reps, who's going to create those opportunities? And it turned out there was no easy way for us to do that. So instead what we did is we used the quotes that came in from the ERP, and then we did the win-loss. And if it said, so we wrote some customizations in, and we said, if it's won, great. No extra action needed. If it's pending a result, they could actually put a date to follow up, and they get a weekly report of all the things they wanted to follow up that week. So it made it really easy for them to follow up on things they didn't have answers on. And then if it's lost, it immediately prompts them, why did you lose it, and who did you lose it to? That was the easy part. Now get them to do it, right? So the immediate answer is, well, I don't know if distributors want to give me this answer and this and this and this. So we actually landed up creating automated reports that come to them that they can send to the customer and say, I'm going to meet you next week. Here are 5 quotes I want you to give me answers on when we get together. Only 5. Easy for the customer to digest, easy for them to follow up on, and easy for them to then to report on. And so if you just take data in bite chunks and little chunks, you actually land up getting a good aggregate. If you send them the 50 quotes that they have to follow up on from this one distributor, ain't happening, or at least not for us. So that's how we follow up on bids. The next bit for us is actually connecting jobs, because what you'll have is you'll have 10 distributors bidding on one job, and they might get 3 quotes on the same job. That's where the opportunity module can then do the many-to-one relationship where we connect them. When we finally launch, hopefully by the end of this week, the Dodge integration, Dodge will create the opportunities automatically, and then they can connect the quotes to those bid jobs. And that's how we're going to approach that bid work. I don't know if that answers the question.
Well, we could spend
hours. And yeah, I'm happy to sit down and talk about it afterwards. There's more to it, yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
So you had mentioned that you had sales teams from different parts of the world, and before you did this implementation of Sugar, there was some maybe disparate processes out there. Could you talk a little bit more about, like, what did you do to get those processes in line, and how long did that take?
It took around 9 months before we even started development on the CRM. So it was 9 months of discovery period, and part of what we did is we listened to best practices. And what we did is we landed up talking to everyone. The inside sales teams in Canada and Australia, the outside sales reps in the US, understanding everybody's processes. And we sort of, as management, made executive decisions what we thought best practices were. And we then communicated those best practices based on, hey, we got everybody's feedback. This is what we got. It was a long laundry list. I mean, it was long. And then we actually showed them what that list looked like. And then we showed them how we filtered that list, and then how we took some processes that were complicated and simplified them. Some reps had homemade CRMs that actually were really good. I mean, they were antiquated, they didn't have mobile applications, but we took their best practices and we said, okay, let's adopt this. And by being able to point to a peer and say, your peers have been doing this and it really works, really motivated the other guys. Mm-hmm. And at some point, you just got to say, this is our process, and you've got to comply. Now, for the guys in Canada, they have a slightly different process to the US. We had to customize their screens through roles to be unique. And the guys in Australia have a very different, the guys in Australia go direct to end users and sell directly to end users. They don't go through distribution. They have a different sales channel. So we had to create very different screens and processes for them. So the CRM acts differently for different groups. But each group has to comply with a singular approach. We also let everybody know nothing is written in stone. Everything is up for debate. If it doesn't work, we'll change it. Because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean we'll change it, but if it doesn't work for the collective group, we'll change it. And so we collect, they come and tell us, and we ask them what works, what doesn't work, and then we make that list. And we share that list with them. And we say, look, everybody agrees on these 5 points. 6 people have their own ideas here. This one's a good one, but these are the common things. And we're open to change. And we don't change too frequently. I mean,
just one more quick question,
sure.
if I may. So when in regards to all those changes you talk about and kind of that flexibility, do you have in-house resources that are doing that development and configuration work and the administration, or are you relying heavily on W systems for that?
It's a healthy mix. I've been fortunate enough to use Sugar I've been using Sugar on and off for around 10 years. So I know enough to be dangerous. So I know where my limitations are. If there are things that I can do, I will not farm that out to W. Partly also because I have other projects I've got W working on, and that are really more complex jobs that I need them to focus and not get distracted on. So I'll do those things. Other things land up getting on a roadmap that W will end up doing for us. So it's a mix. We don't have a lot of resources. You're looking at the primary resource internally, this has sort of been my baby, and my reputation's been staked on it. We got a new employee this year, and I've been sort of slowly training her and getting her to do things and getting her to be the support person. One of the other things that we tried that failed, by the way, we thought was really a brilliant idea. It somewhat fell on its face. Maybe it will resurrect in a better way. We try to create a buddy system amongst the reps. So find champions who were big adoptive users and then make them go-to people to create a buddy system within. We didn't get enough volunteers. So we had to develop those internal buddies. I think we tried to do it too early. It was just too early for anybody to become a master or to be that active an adoptive user, for them to feel comfortable enough to coach anybody else. I think ultimately it could work. I'm saying I'd like to say it would work, but I think it could work if people really love the system and it helps them sell more. There are people who are just resisting every day. It just happens, but they use it. So yeah, I think that answers the question. Yeah, okay.
How long have you been on Sugar live?
We've now been a year and a half. Our adoption it's an evolution, so we roll out stages. So we've had a year and a half now that we're live, and probably 2 years of working on it. In my previous life, I started on Sugar 10-ish years ago, so I had some experience from before and had a lot of bruises and scars on my back to show for failures. So I think we heard in the keynote this morning, it's like, don't be afraid to fail. Apparently, I think I've taken that to heart. I failed far too many times. But yeah, a year and a half, and so far we've had very good results. Good. How are we doing for time? Anything else?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Anything else, guys? All right, perfect. Thank you.